Welcome to another episode of The Almost Daily Zencast, Volume 2. Admittedly weird-ass host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Today's show, political distractions from our true spiritual calling. Hello and namaste, my friends. Thank you once again for tuning in to my humble, silly, often hot mess of a shamble of amateur bullshit show, because I am not a professional, folks. I'm just a blue-collar, redneck, hard-working monkey with a wrench up a ladder that's got a couple of things to say about the political, ideological, mental cage we live in and the spiritual direction that we should be heading in that we're being distracted from. That's way too much of a mouthful, right? Let's tone it down, Mr. Zeppo. Thank you for tuning in, you guys. I know that my show is rough and tumble, often a bit silly and absent-minded, and other times flat out boring as fuck. But I hope that amongst all of those flaws, you, especially you, my dear, really serious, hardcore listeners that just stick with me here and show up to tune in whenever I drop a new episode, I hope that you're catching all the gems in the bullshit, the sparkly, shiny things lost in the weeds, the thematic dots that I'm trying to connect, not because I think I'm a genius and I've got anything sorted out, but rather because I think there are some cosmic, organic truths that are staring us in the face. And maybe, just maybe, if we all help each other a little bit, we can open our eyes to those truths. So, how's everybody doing? Mercury was in retrograde for a redonk-a-donk long period just now. So for those of you who are really easily impacted by Mercury retrograde, I bet it was a tough slog. I bet it was a hard fortnight. I bet it was... Either of those two sound like a good band name to you? Sorry, sidebar, tangent. It's been a hard day's night of a couple of weeks of Mercury retrograde craziness, right? And for those of you who are like, that shit don't mean nothing to me, good for you. And for those of you who actually took advantage of this astrological phenomena to not just cower in the corner and fear the chaos, but rather welcome in the chaotic wave of confusion and actually hold space, save space, create space for the shadow elements, the dark side elements of our own true human nature that often reach up and try to make contact during, especially this time of year, during these interesting cosmological transitional events that have such a, quote, negative impact on people. The dark side is not the enemy. The dark side is just the twin of the light side. The yin to the yang to the yin. They are interpolated. They are interconnected. They are intra-connected. Those are all real words, folks. And here we are on the, on the other side. Congratulations if you kept your shit together. If you couldn't, hugs, love, compassionate support, and uplifting energy. If you had a hard time, give yourself a break. Take a day or two in the next few days to really just ground yourself, connect to your strengths, and recover from whatever difficult transition or obstacle or challenges you faced during this recent astrological chaos. Not that I'm a huge, astrology nerd, right? I just know that the universe is alive and that it's doing things that we only are pretending to understand, that we're only scratching the surface at. And that Mercury, things like Mercury in retrograde, events like that, most certainly have, just like the moon pulls on the tides, have some kind of spiritual, energetic, psychological, meta-constructural impact on us. And we perceive those things and interpret those things and experience those things in our own way. And I'm just trying to be supportive for those of you out there that felt disrupted and otherwise, challenged or beat down by Mercury retrograde. But enough of that. Let's put a pin in that. We'll have to come back and talk about such events in greater depth with some future co-host, or rather, there's one for the post. Ding, ding, ding. Edit this out, please, and replace it with the next bit. Just kind of trim this out and make it all cleaner. We will, dear friends, I love how I just, announce my edits that I might do later in the show, in quote post, but then I just, upload the show anyways and let it sit there for months, because one day, I'm going to go through and really clean everything up and tighten it down and then maybe add some cool bonus material. But as of yet, I've only sort of taken a stab at that here and there. But that's a whole nother behind-the-scenes documentary type thing to talk about at another point. What was I saying? Yes, friends. Put a pin in it. I'm trying to solicit special guests, interviews, and of course, a rotating team of potential co-hosts. And slowly but surely, interest in that has sort of gradually picked up, but still not quite fomented or manifested a real permanent solution yet. But it's coming. I can sense it. So put a pin in that. We'll come back and talk with someone who really gets Mercury retrograde in depth. And now, let us take a moment and still the waters and clear the mind and really focus on the theme for today. So I humbly invite you in joining me in 1 minute, one little minute. I know I opened with an Om, a triple Om mini meditation, but join me now after all this little acknowledging the chaos, acknowledging the whirlwind of crazy, however it manifested in your time frame, in your timeline, in your lifespan of this recent Mercury retrograde, and whatever the fuck else, right? Like, you don't need to blame poor old little Mercury up there, our neighboring sister planet, for all the bullshit in your life. There's plenty of other causes. I think that astrological events like that just sort of bring energetic focus as opposed to causality. But I could be wrong. I don't know. Whatever. I'm having right now in making this podcast a little bit of a disrupted, chaotic moment. Let's ground, right? And really focus. Join me in just 1 minute of beautiful harmonic music by, quote, Beautiful Chorus. That is, I believe, their name. And as I'm giving credit to music and or additional content, let me share with you that the opening bit was myself live with you here as I broadcast live through Sprecher.com, chanting Om in like unofficial time displaced collaboration with Sadhguru. Some of you may or may not have heard of him. He's a really groovy guy on the internets. He is a guru, but he's one of those gurus that gets it, that tells you right away, like, don't attach yourself to any guru. Don't give any guru your money. Gurus are just here to help you realize that the lesson, the truth, the wisdom is within you, and to give you tools to reacclimate to accessing those resources that already exist inside of every one of us. So check him out. See if you do or do not like his vibe. But he does a beautiful, simple, and if I understand, linguistically correct Aum meditation. There's a lot of debate, and I think I've talked about it in some long-lost episode from the early days of the show. But if you look into it, there's a little bit of different schools of thought with a little bit of back and forth between them about how Aum is pronounced. And ultimately spelled, right? But of course, in the ancient Sanskrit, it's its own character that has multiple symbols within it. So we're put a pin in that. We'll come back to that and do an episode about that soon. I just want to acknowledge that was Sadhguru. I was playing it off YouTube. So hopefully now no violations there. I'm just trying to share little bits of meaningful resources that you can go find to meditate with. And this one I'm about to play now is Beautiful Chorus, and it's called The Opening, and you can find it on Insight Timer. Honest, authentic endorsement on my part. No one's paying me to do this. In fact, it costs me an arm and a leg. It costs me billions. I'm sorry. I should have saved that joke for Good Morning Trumptopia. Okay, let's get grounded. 1 minute, one beautiful chorus, The Opening.
May
broadcasting uplifting energy to everybody. To you guys listening, and to Beautiful Chorus for creating that lovely, simple, eloquent, and very direct meditation. And now let's get right down to it, folks. Nobody asked me, but here's my worldview in a nutshell in terms of this particular episode's title. All political ideology is mental slavery. Both sides, all sides of the left versus right, or whatever label versus whatever label dichotomy, they are riddled with corruption. The system that has corrupted these polemics relies on polarized political anger. So the more you and I, the more all y'all out there are busy thinking contentious thoughts, accusing the others of being wrong, spewing hate, anger, insults at each other, calling each other names, etc., all over imaginary, made-up political ideology, the more the system keeps you distracted from your true spiritual calling. Now, do I know what your true spiritual calling is? Not exactly, but I do know that it is nobody on earth has the, quote, true spiritual calling of being caught up in political ideological contention and fighting and discussion and argumentation and hate spewing and judgment and otherifying and vilifying. That, my friends, that activity, that treadmill that they keep us treading on, is not in any way, shape, or form connected to, related to, or even remotely close to our true spiritual calling. Now, I'm not going to pretend to dictate to you what your true spiritual calling is. Only you can truly define and understand the nuances of your specific spiritual calling in this current lifetime, in this current space monkey suit that you're in. But as a collective, as a species, I can assure you that we can rule out things that are categorically obstacles or distractions or just blatantly unrelated to anybody's spiritual calling. Political ideology, political fighting, warmongering, war profiteering, hating each other, fighting for our rights, quote unquote, fighting for our freedoms, quote unquote. None of those things are in any way, shape, or form related to the human species, plural. That's a hard one to roll off the tongue. The true spiritual calling of the human species. Those things, my friends, I humbly submit to you, are ego traps. One and all. So if you're defending this political puppet or that political puppet, if you're making the argument that this political ideology is the most righteous or any of the others is the most righteous, if you are yelling until you're blue in the face about how wrong the other team is, then you're being led by the nose on a treadmill that goes nowhere, whose sole purpose is to blind you and distract you from your true, genuine, and deeply organic spiritual purpose. Does politics heal anything? I know. Many people that are bound up within the mental trappings of political righteousness, of political do-goodery, of political, I'm the good guys defending everybody from the bad guys sorts of thinking. You're going to say, with all the good things that politics has achieved, all the rights that we've been able to defend and create or acquire or take back from the system of oppression, yada, yada, yada. I get it. The Catholic Church does a lot of good with some of its money too. But the Catholic Church is also busy raping little children and perpetuating the world dominance of the Roman Empire. Right? Ego is not an idiot. Ego is a savvy, seductive, quite talented adversary. And of course, the deepest truth, the hardest pill to swallow, is that ego is not separate from the light. The darkness is not here to be destroyed by the light. The light is not here to obliterate the dark. Without each other, this realm would be moot. This material experience would be meaningless. Our true spiritual calling is not to fight a war and win. Our true spiritual calling is to heal ourselves, one another, each other, the species, and the world itself. For we have caused it a lot of toxic damage that we are responsible for. We, as a species, collectively have become toxic. And this place that we argue about the shape of is our womb. And we have not been born yet. This life is part of the process of being in the womb. The birth, we've been denied any comprehension of by our own machinations. And thus, here we are, busy on a treadmill, this meat grinder merry-go-round of life and death and political argument. And we're confronted with the irony is that for as much as all of what I'm stating might be true, we must still contend, deal with, adapt to, respond to, and do something about the political realities of this material illusion that we're all caught up in. It's a really delightful catch-22. As always, my friends, I thank you for joining me. I'm going to wrap it up here and leave you guys with that dichotomy to contemplate. As I like to remind you, Einstein put it really eloquently. This universe is an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. Thank you and namaste. Appreciate what I share on this show, then you might also appreciate what I post on social media. I humbly invite you, dear listeners, if you have not as of yet, to find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and like and share my posts. Help me broaden this audience out Not because I want to be special, but because I think people are afraid that they think this way and they're surrounded by people who don't understand. And I'm a voice out there in the interwebs going, hey, you guys, there's plenty of us who think this way. You're not alone. Get it? Help me reach those people who don't realize they're not alone yet. And as always, friends, may peace, love, and grooviness blossom in your hearts. Until next time, I have been your humble host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo.